Hi, welcome to the Medicare Show. I'm your host and Medicare advisor, Jeffrey Kuhn. They say it's been a minute since I've probably done a podcast. It's been more like many minutes. It's probably been since the fall of last year. We have been overwhelmed with some of the changes in dealing with our clients. And it's just been one of the biggest change years I think that we've ever seen. And this is, 15 plus years. And I've got some stories and some upcoming podcasts and things that I'm going to share with everybody. Some things that we've learned along through this past annual election period, open enrollment period. And some of the upcoming podcasts I do plan on getting back on track and doing for everybody. This, time, it's, we're dealing now in April, transitioning into May. The end of this month, but spring is finally here. I think it's been a long winter for everybody. I know here in Western New York, it's been absolutely freezing. And I finally got a break a couple of weeks ago to go visit family down in Florida. And I think I joke around with my clients and go, I think it's the first time I felt my toes in about 6 months. It's been kind of an unruly, snowy, cold winter up here in Western New York. And it was a well-deserved break because we've never had to work so hard as we've had to work since probably August, September of this past year. We're licensed in a lot of states, and we deal with clients all over the United States with Medicare issues, Medicare planning. And I'm going to share with you in this podcast some of the things that, we've never seen before. And this past year, probably the midsummer, we started getting information about some of the changes were coming and realized pretty quickly here in Western New York, specifically the Rochester area network, which is Monroe and the immediately surrounding counties. We were seeing the biggest change coming that's ever been seen historically in this area. And a lot of it deals with the Inflation Reduction Act from a couple of years ago that got passed, where that was the first year it was in law, a drop of majority of the PPO plans that are here. We had a major insurance carrier leave the area, and really meant anybody on a Medicare Advantage plan in this area, for the most part, was getting terminated. They're going to have to pick a new plan. And, we had to get prepared for this. The other areas in Buffalo, our clients over in Syracuse, weren't as impacted as the clients in the Rochester area network. So that was kind of the leading challenge that we had to deal with, is getting everybody these updates and helping them make decisions. It's driving around. I was actually out in Buffalo last night, and a reminder of everything that's going on right now economically. We've had this war in Iran, and a lot of the changes with Medicare around prescriptions and what people are paying. And I'm getting gas, and I'm thinking, my God, just regular unleaded gas, the cheap stuff is now well over $4 a gallon. And I had to get diesel, believe it or not, a couple of weeks ago, and that's now close to $6 a gallon. And you think about what this costs just to put fuel in your car. And I'm thinking to myself, I know my clients are going through a lot with the increase in Medicare costs, supplemental plan increases, the drug coverage, one of the big ones for a lot of people. It hurts. We've had so much coming out in the news. It's creating a lot of anxiety around people. There is some good stuff embedded in there. We just found out a couple of days ago, as far as Medicare reimbursement rates for the insurance companies, is going to be a lot higher, specifically for Medicare Advantage plans into next year than they were anticipated to be. Originally the government was going to, increase less than 1% from this year, and that was going to put a strain, I think, on a lot of insurance companies. We saw a huge degradation, I think is the word we want to use, in benefits, with the insurance carriers trying to control costs. And that was, again, due to the rising costs of prescription coverage. But we're looking at going, okay, is this going to have a major impact that the increase in Medicare benefits to these insurance carriers is going to be less than really what's needed to sustain affordable care? Well, they raised it from about less than 1% to about 2.5%. So that was good news. You saw a lot of the insurance companies' stocks jump up. Hopefully those insurance companies pass those savings on and benefits and decrease cost to the consumer. Hopefully it's not like the gas and oil industry, because as soon as we saw this Iran conflict break out, we saw oil shoot up to nearly $100 a barrel. And yesterday, early in the day, it certainly futures were crossed over $100 a barrel. And last night I was in Buffalo, and all of a sudden, I got notices. The oil was dropping. I go, some news must have just broke, because we knew that was kind of a deadline for Iran. And now we're seeing oil trade in the $80-some range. The unfortunate part with this, and everybody knows this, the gas pump is quick to raise prices, and they're really lagging to drop those prices. It's amazing, because we know the gas in the tanks was not bought at $100 oil. They're getting a lot of profit on it. They milk it on the way down. They keep the prices up. We know that the oil inventories and the cost of oil, even though the majority of our oil is not affected by Iran, but the overall cost isn't, and we have to pay for that. So hopefully the Medicare system is going to operate a little bit differently. The insurance companies aren't going to pocket the money. We're going to see somewhat of a retention of decent benefits, as well as maybe some improvement. The changes that are coming, and I'm going to talk about this in upcoming podcasts, Medicare supplemental plans, we're starting to see an acceleration of cost. People have not been really planning for their retirement, dealing with the increased cost of Medicare. And we're going to get into that in upcoming podcasts. What you just set aside, what do you need to plan on? There's some mid-year premium increases, and we've been talking to our clients about this, and people still think, don't they only do that once a year? Not with supplemental plans. They can apply to the state insurance departments for rate increases. A lot of them get denied. They'll go back in later in the year. There's a big one coming up. We have a handful of clients with this insurance carrier that we're going to have to address and get them moved over to a little bit more affordable supplemental plans. As far as probably the June, July timeframe at the latest, that change is going to happen. Drug plans this year, it's people, we get the same calls every year. They go to their pharmacy and people are being told, here's your copay. It's $300, it's $600. Well, Medicare standard deductible, and we've talked about this in prior podcasts, $615 this year. That's got to get paid first. The pharmacies tend to use the word copay for those things. So people get shocked and think I got to pay that all month, every month. I'm sorry. It is not. People's out-of-pocket max is about $2,100. But what we've seen, the biggest change is those tier 3 drugs now have co-insurance in a lot of the plans as opposed to co-pays. People on drugs that are on the GLP-1s, Mounjaros, Wegovy's, all those type of prescriptions are paying a lot more for those and are typically hitting that out-of-pocket max. We're now seeing tier 2 drugs being subject to the deductible where they had in the past. It's majority of the insurance companies have been tier 3 and higher. They're now including tier 2s. And we've seen a lot of carriers with tier 1s that were free. People are mad. They're now having to pay small co-pays for those. Again, it's the insurance companies having to pick up the burden of those costs. They're passing them on to the consumer. So there's been a lot of change. There's been a lot of financial change, I think, is what people are paying for things and increased costs. One of the biggest surprises we've had here in Western New York, and I mentioned this in the beginning of the podcast, we've seen a lot of change nationwide with our clients. And that Rochester area network, I've yet to see an area that's probably been hit as hard as this area. And we tell our clients here, we call this ground zero for some of the Medicare fallout. You've started seeing dental benefits drop. We've seen a huge change in plans terminating. And here's a statistical fact. And I heard this after January 1st. The people that are Medicare Advantage plans, and that's over 90% of the population in that Rochester area network, are they're on Advantage plans. After January 1st, the number of people you can guess that had plans that terminated and didn't have a new plan selected was a lot higher than I thought it was. We send letters to all of our clients. We call them. We have meetings. We can't communicate enough. You're in a plan that's terminating. We know what everybody has, and we know which plans are terminating. And there's still clients that never responded, ones that we sent messages to via phone, email, snail mail. They called us in January and said, I just realized I don't have insurance. We're like, where have you been? We've been trying to get a hold of you. And I said, they're like, I'm sorry. And it's when they get their prescriptions filled, they realize this. Well, here's the number. After January 1st, in this Monroe County area, there were 20,000 people that did not have coverage. It terminated. Most of those people did not even know that happened. They go to the doctors and they find out they've got a deductible for Medicare, they've got 20% coinsurance, and they've got no drug coverage. You know, it's not paying attention to those things that people need to be a little bit better about being more aware of. One of the, again, the upcoming podcast, I'm going to share a little bit of story, the conversation I've had with our clients back in October, specifically about managing your prescriptions. And I'm going to tell you, you have to be more involved with dealing with this in 26 and into 27. It makes a huge difference. I'm going to share with you some of the things that we've discovered, which has saved our clients hundreds and hundreds of dollars and potentially thousands of dollars in being more proactively engaged in managing those things. So I've got some great podcasts coming up. We'll probably be releasing one a week here, getting caught up on some changes and some things, and just updates too on what's going on with the markets, current events that are going on, because it does impact everybody on Medicare. It's affordability, people's premiums for Medicare. We've got people that are getting hit with IRMAs. I've got one client in particular, it's taken most of their Social Security check away. And I'm going to tell you how we got that back. So we got that IRMA reverse, Social Security check that went from $1,000 down to a net of just over $200. And that's the client's only income monthly. That's a huge amount of money. We did get that back for the client. So I'll tell you a little bit of story about that in the upcoming podcast. I appreciate you joining, sticking with us. Please, subscribe, like the podcast if you don't mind. If there's anything you want to get updates on, certainly email us or put it in the comments. I appreciate you joining us and look forward to sharing you with some of the upcoming information that we have. Bye-bye.